Will you hand? All right, we're gonna get started in about 2 minutes. So, finish up your conversations. We're gonna start in about 2 minutes. Try to find a seat and feel free to pull these seats out and use them and share. Lap sitting? No lap sitting? Yeah. Lap sitting? Lap sitting. Let's see. Should I carry this one out here farther? Woo. You got any other extra ones here? People? One more? Yeah. Some more. All right. Any more open seats available? And did you say you're going to put a face thing on or no?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Where's the other?
Oh, wait, we got one more person? Get at least one more over here. Is that it? All right. Thank you all for coming. This is what month is it? July? July. This is a July meetup. That's a really old joke. I did that every time I started a DevOps meetup back in the day. It's like, this is the what month or whatever. Okay, so this is the July Next 5 meetup. And what Next 5 is about is we had a conversation. We, being Ben Clayton, Dustin Holub, and myself, Aaron Blythe. When the world shut down in 2020, we had this conversation that was just going for like months on end about like how is the world going to change when we get back into the world. And then beyond that, like we started talking about technology and how we love technology. Overall, the three of us are optimists, and we think that technology is going to change things for the better. But we set kind of a sight 5 years in the future, and that's what this meetup is about. So the last several months, we actually talked about Android humanoid robots, and now we're kind of moving into like a vibe coding type of world. Hey, bud. Good to see you. All right. So the way tonight's going to be laid out is we got a couple of things at first, and then we're going to hand it over to Philip to do the main content. First thing I'm going to do is some news. So in a previous meetup, what we did is I actually asked Gemini Deep Research to make this for me. What this is a table of all these different robots across the top. And Dustin and I were asking the question, there's humanoid Android robots coming. When can I have one, right? So we asked the questions. We want to know the company, the country, planned release date, customer cost, weight, height, battery life, and top differentiating features. For the most part, the cheapest ones we could find were about $20,000, and maybe we would get them roughly at the end of this year or next year. So I would like to add one to that list that I just found out about this week, and that is Clone Robotics Alpha, right? And one thing about this one is the other ones that I saw all kind of look like that Tesla Optimus that you've maybe seen, or the one that does the backflips. We did that one or whatever. This one is creepy. I'll go ahead and launch the video. Let's take a look. So what I wanted you to know about this one is pre-orders are available in 2025. That means now. They plan to ship 200 and I think it was 239 or 279 this year. Right? Weird. Okay, so can I go back to this? How do I? Oh no, we're never gonna get out of here. So here is where I actually found out about it, and it looks even creepier.
This is what I do in our reception area. It's not
Eee. So it's kind of like, hey, Dustin, would you like to wake up? I can make you coffee. Weird. I couldn't find a price point for this one. It looks like the battery life is way less than all the ones we looked at 1.5 hours instead of 8 hours, but comparable height and weight of roughly about 1.7 meters, which comes in a little bit under 6 foot, and then 60 kilos, which is somewhere around 150 to 175 pounds. But the big differentiating feature here is the artificial muscles called myofibers, and they contract using water pressure. This fluid type of thing is part of the reason that the battery life does not last as long as some of the other ones that just look like electronics or whatever. So cool stuff. All right, next in the news is I want to do news, one about limitations and then one about some progress that can be made. Right? First is the limitation, and a paper just came out recently where they kind of asked the question about hallucinations and can a model create its own world, right? And make projections or whatever. So like we understand that the Earth is catching sun rays. We go around the sun, and the rays come almost directly as a vector from the sun. There's a little bit of light bending and whatever, but it mostly looks like the one on the left, right? What the transformer came up with after feeding all the information that we as humans took to deduce this was the model on the right, which is a little bit sporadic, right? So one thing about this that I usually package with large language models, generative AI, all that stuff in general is I have not seen any customers yet that I have, and I speak to customers about AI every day, where it has taken people's jobs, right? Like it's not there. What I have seen is some people who are really good at it who can 10x themselves, right? On some tasks, not their entire job or whatever. So this is a limitation that I saw just this week. I think this was posted 4 or 5 days ago. But it's a fascinating paper. Dustin will send you the link on LinkedIn. Okay. Here's where I got to close these. Does anybody want to pre-order the clone? There's only 279 this year. What's that? What's that? Yeah, yeah. Yep. Yeah, the one that we liked best when we did the full review. Okay, so the previous example I had was one that was maybe not as it was limitations, right? It can only do what it can only do, right? This one's more progress. This paper was again just 4 days ago, about decompression and how it works. They've actually applied, or actually have found that the large language models work in a Bayesian sort of way, which was kind of a revelation. And what they saw was, I remember it was 40, it went from 40% hallucinations, no, a success rate. They lowered hallucinations and had a success rate of going from 40% to 80% on the test set that they had. So that's a huge step forward based on this test set. The way that a lot of times they do these heuristics and test sets or whatever is they send a whole bunch of tests against it. Every test set's different or whatever. Like it may not do as well on different test sets or whatever. But actually, this is one I feel like, having watched papers for the last 2.5 years, is one to watch. Because I don't normally see that type of success rate jump. One to watch. They could have a test set that was made for this type of test or whatever. But I found this one to be really cool in lowering hallucinations.
So is this innovation outside of the model training, but more just like a test time, as far as like limitations, or is it model training?
So they're building, what they're building is on top of OpenAI's DaVinci 002, which is not open source, and I don't know if they're doing up training on top of it exactly, or if it is in the loop that happens after the fact. They were using DaVinci 002. I mean, it's OpenAI's DaVinci 002, which is an older model, right? Yeah. I'm going to explain a little bit of what you're talking about when I kind of go over next 5. But yes, let's put a pin in that because I'm going to be on that. Oh, we see all of your messages. Good thing we're recording it. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Is there, are you working in that space right now?
Where the ability to move into is more of specialized agents and how to order trader which you got AI agents or as those tokens and maybe decide, pretty good. That's not like the my next stage.
Yeah. Cool. All right. And then in the interest of moving on, take the reins. Oh, wait. Oh, I got to stop. I got to close your LinkedIn. I'm glad it's your LinkedIn and not mine. You're like, do you want me to present? I was like, yeah, of course I do. Well, my links were to LinkedIn. I just happened to be that you're authenticated and I'm not.
So in the progress front, so is anybody single product? Is anybody yeah. What? So use but I think as far as user base experience, so agent was released this last week, still rolling out. of the time, this one was deep research. It starts like what energy of the show. It does make a tool use to check. So now. Lots of fun. Yeah, still big. And it is designed to be collaborative too. So you guys know a lot of these interact are communications that work and people can. So in this case, now if I stickers for my company in theory, I can charge the agent for going design the stickers, create the stickers, and I think this is exciting. Scared. Scared specifically. The safety staff. I'm still a little split on what should actually be ever because I'm not sure if they can it's going yet. As Aaron stated earlier, I'm going to try to be glass half full about this and just be all involved. This is like, you throw a couple chairs up there as well. Spreadsheet finish, you take away what you see down there, but 2 minutes of fun. So when we talk about it's not taking a job, we're not going to yet. And all of this will be very slow. Say what? Say what? Yeah, probably. I also posted the results for the last exam. All that really is the same as this. That's performed. So, chop another one up. The progress. Yeah.
And this was from the live stream today.
It was last Thursday or Friday. I can't remember.
Okay.
So I haven't used it yet. I don't know experience here. So this is the section where we kind of set up before my announcements. Or if you have anybody that's in the network space, and retaining these mechanisms. So does anybody else in here have any community events or any
We're trying to go on the cadence of the third Monday of every month. So the next one is August 18th, and Marcus will be presenting. No, I saw him. Oh, there he is. There. Marcus will be presenting next month again on vibe coding using a different tool than what we'll see tonight. So we're kind of going on a vibe coding theme for a while, kind of like we did with the robots, which this seems to be way more popular. So that's awesome. Do you want to answer that now, or do you want to wait till your presentation? I think that too.
DevOps having a meeting tomorrow. I'm not part of the DevOps meetup. I mean, I follow meetup.com. Tomorrow, based on beyond PDFs. I'm not sure.
I think I'm marked as an organizer of it, and I'm not sure either. But it's on meetup.com, the DevOps KC meetup. Is that what it is? Johnson County? Okay. Well, excellent. And feel free to use the meetup.com slide for next 5 to share your name, your links to your LinkedIn, your websites or whatever. That's what it's there for, to make connections or whatever. We have a Discord. I don't know if we're gonna get everybody to join Discord because I used to run a Slack and we had tons of people in there or whatever. It's awesome. I can put the link up to the Discord if people are interested in that. I don't know if that's still a thing people are interested in. What's that? You interested? I send Dustin inappropriate stuff on it. Anyone else? Excellent. After we learn so much tonight, we can all vibe code one. All right, this is awesome. Thank you for having the bravery to speak up. Anybody else? Excellent. Thank you. That's awesome. Thanks for sharing.
Thank you for setting the bar not so low.
By the time
All right. Okay. So I'm going to spend 5 minutes laying down what next five is, and then I'm going to hand it over to Phil. So basically updates. We are looking for sponsors. If you have corporate sponsors, like your companies or whatever, to cover like future like drinks and food or whatever. I think we can get food kind of catered here or whatever, and have like maybe shareables or whatever. But that would be awesome because like we want to help support this bar. They've had a really hard time with all the construction out there, and that's part of the reason that we decided to come here. Is like we love Kansas City businesses and everything, so we are looking for sponsors. If your companies have making record profits or whatever, you know, sponsoring a local meetup for like $200 once a month is a great way to help the community, right? So again, back to the reason we started this. As humans, it's very hard for us to understand exponential growth. What we understand usually is linear growth, right? But this is an exponential graph that's linear. This is what we call Moore's law. Every 18 months, someone postulated, his name was Moore, back in the 60s, that transistors would double every 18 months. And technology moved on. A bunch of different things have happened since then, and that has stayed true. That means that computers have gotten twice as fast every 18 months for decades. What ends up happening is here's a 5 megabyte hard drive disk in 1956. Here's a 1 terabyte micro SD card in 2020. Those are the kind of changes that happen over time when you have exponential growth. So like I said, it's very hard for us to understand this as humans because we don't think this way. We think in linear terms, right? As that top right moves down 5 years over, it almost looks like it's nothing compared to where we're going to be 5 years from now. And one of our favorite authors, Ray Kurzweil, wrote a book in the early 2000s, around 2003 or 2004, and said, based on this, we have the computing power of one insect brain at the time he wrote that book. He wrote an update to that book in 2023, roughly 18 or 19 years afterwards, and someone on Reddit said this is basically where we were at about 2022, 2023 is one mouse brain. With NVIDIA, that has been accelerating, and it looks like at about 2026 was Ray's original 2026, 2027 was his original prediction that will reach the computing power of one human brain. And 2045-ish is when we'll hit the singularity. The singularity means that we have the basically the computational power of all human brains put together in one place, right? So what this means to us, the other phenomenon is that the cloud. Now, instead of inside of like one little chip, we can actually spread the computing power laterally, right? And this is what I showed at the Next 5 conference that we did in 2023. The size of models, again, that BERT model was phenomenal when it came out. A couple years later, it was nothing compared to the transformers that people were putting out in OpenAI and at Google, right? Since then, it hasn't totally flattened, but we did hit kind of a plateau. And what we've seen in the last couple of years are, even though the number of parameters continues to grow, the breakthroughs that we're making, very similar to moving from a transistor to a chip and things like that, are through things like the line of reasoning. It's building stuff on top of the models, similar to what we saw earlier about understanding how there's like Bayesian type of things, because these are based on statistics, right? So that's what we want to think about in next 5 is the next 5 years. Things that are not happening right now are going to happen, right? There will be bipedal android robots in the world that you'll interact with. You will vibe code or vibe create something, right? You will speak the language that you speak, most of us English or whatever, to a machine. A machine will go take tasks, go out and do a bunch of those tasks, and come back and give you a result or give you an outcome. Maybe go book an appointment for you or whatever. That will happen sometime in the next 5 years. So we view ourselves as optimistic futurists, and we want to make sure that we are on the right path. The thing that I tell people is, like, when I graduated from college, it was a long time ago, they said, be ready to have at least 5 to 7 careers in your lifetime, right? Like, you're going to switch. Like, for a while I was a software developer, and then I was a software architect, which is kind of the same. Now I'm in sales or whatever. Like, you're going to do different things, right? I think the clip is going to change from where it was 2 to 5 years at a job to something more like 1 quarter to a year. So we have to make sure that we're, like, educating ourselves, and that's what this meetup is all about, is finding ways to educate ourselves for things that are going to happen in the next 5 years. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Philip, who's going to talk to us about vibe coding and how he's already mastered it, right?
Yeah, I'm definitely not learning in real time along the way.
Hold for about 2 minutes of technical overhead while we get Phil set.
All right. Thank you.
I'm not sitting back down here, so some of y'all understand.
Yeah.
In an orderly manner, please.
All right. I'm done speaking, so I'm going to done the beer. Anyone want? No. Oh yeah, this is a perfect break to go grab another beer, grab some food or whatever. Support the local bar. Good. Can I get the Hefe again? For beer?
Yeah.
I do. Aaron Blythe?
Microphone with him.
Okay. No, that's fine. That made it.
Right on track. I don't like it. Yep.
It was still recording.
That's fine.
So let me put up. Let's see. Oh, Courtney's iPhone. That's what I'm going to connect to. Well, Courtney. Oh, Courtney.
Sorry,
be
Courtney,
surprised.
we're stealing your data.
I'm using cursors on
Perfect.
I mean, cool.
All right, you are on camera and we are
Okay.
recording content. So you're good
All
to go,
right.
man.
Great. All right, cool. Okay. Just to kind of get an idea of who I'm talking to, how many of you are professional software developers? Like, you're coders, you can write code, you can write your own stuff, you don't need AI necessarily, et cetera, et cetera. Somebody started to put their hand down. I'm like, what? Wow, you're really ahead of the curve. All right. How many of you are currently vibe coding? Okay, some of you. Okay, let's get a Venn diagram thing going here. How many of you think vibe coding is divine punishment for the hubris of coders and is a plague on the world? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I didn't get too much response for the first part, but once I said plague on the world, people really picked up. So yeah, so that's good to know, because I am a coder as well. I'm going to be addressing these things primarily from that perspective. But one of the things about vibe coding is that you don't necessarily need that background to appreciate it. But from an empathy standpoint, this is a big deal for me. So we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about what this means for developers and ways that we can use it, ourselves. I am going to spend most of my time in Cursor tonight, but I do want to start out with just a little bit of a slideshow. It's super short, very boring. I picked like the most boring Google Slides template I could find right now, because this is not necessarily the most important part of the presentation, but I think it sets a little bit of a framework, because Since this is the first in kind of the vibe coding series, I didn't just want to talk about like the nitty gritty of Cursor. I wanted to give you some things to think about in terms of vibe coding in general, like some patterns you can use, some strategies, how to attack it and how to think about it that apply across different tools. But then we'll look at how I use Cursor as an individual. First thing I want to talk about is who I am. I'm not going to do the slide presentation because God only knows if I can get back to my main screen after that. But I'm a lifetime nerd. It's genetic, have been all my life. I'm an owner at Integrity Inspired Solutions, which is a software development company just a block away from here between the Midas and the bank on the other side of Maloney's. We're a custom software development company, so businesses come to us with problems and we build software to fix it. I'm a coder. I've been at it for over 20 years. Even though I'm the company owner, I still write code almost every day. I'm still in this game and will be for quite some time, I hope. I'm a gamer, a cigar and bourbon aficionado. I'm a single dad. I don't get it either. It's a mystery to me. I'm just a huge bag of green flags. I don't know what the problem is there. I'm an MMA coach. You might not be able to tell by looking at me. And I'm also a full contact stick fighter, and that's usually the one people have the hardest trouble believing. So here's the photo. I'm in the red, about to deliver an epic hand shot to one of my most senior students, I might add. Look at that backhand cocked up near my head, just ready to clock him in the side of the head once I get his hand out of the way. It's a great shot. But anyway, that's a little bit about me and my diverse hobbies. If you have interest in any of those things, hit me up. What's my interest in all this? The main interest is that AI is an existential threat to my company and my profession. It is. And this is what I was talking about from that empathy standpoint. I don't know how many of you are active on LinkedIn, but I think it's bad for your IQ, generally speaking. And I'm very active on LinkedIn, so that should tell you something. But it is. And you generally have people falling into one of two camps. Either they're like, oh my gosh, we're all going to get fired tomorrow. And like any layoff that happens at any company, I'll bet they replaced them with AI, you know, and it's just like the apocalypse is upon us, right? And in 6 months, every software developer is going to be out of work and every CEO is going to be vibe coding a replacement for Salesforce. You know, you get that side of the fence. But then you get this other extreme, which is kind of a head in the sand, kind of like, oh, hey, you know, have you seen the stuff that AI tools produce? We're not going anywhere for a really long time. You know, when they invented calculators, they didn't get rid of accountants and all this stuff. And I think as developers, we have to acknowledge that we have an emotional and a financial stake in trying to minimize what's happening. And I think that we're all going to be better off if we just deal with it. Right? Like it's the reality. It's changing the landscape. It's not going to stop changing the landscape. The tools, even if they froze today, still have irrevocably changed the software development landscape. And they didn't freeze today, it turns out. So rather than have a big hype beast kind of like, yeah, you know, tomorrow I'm going to be able to tell my computer to replace Google and it's going to do it. And then these sort of like head in the sand, like, oh, hey, you know, I'm going to be writing Visual Basic for the rest of my life. But these things are between these two things is the actuality, right? And so my take on this was when I saw what was happening, I felt very threatened by it. I've been in this game a long time and I still got a long time to retirement. And I did not appreciate being put in this position, right? I was like, man, it took me a long time to learn domain-driven design patterns that I could beat people over the head with, right? Like, how am I supposed to feel superior about my expertise now when someone can ask ChatGPT to write them a repository pattern and it'll do it? It's like, hey, I used to make money telling people what a repository pattern was, you know, and it was kind of panic-inducing. And not only for me as an individual, but for my company as well. My company exists off of custom software development. And we have a very existential interest in being employable by clients to continue that activity. And if all of our clients, you know, read an article and think they can fire up Claude and not need us anymore, that's a problem, right? So I decided to engage AI fully because I really wanted to understand the reality of what was going on. I didn't want to be led by hype, and I didn't want to be led by fear either. So I just really threw in with both hands and engaged with it. And instead of like making fun of vibe coders and being like, oh, you guys don't know what you're doing, you got to be an engineer to do whatever, I'm like, I'm just going to do it, right? Because how else will I know? I mean, I can make fun of it, but I won't know unless I do it. And so I started to do it. And I started to do it with a variety of tools. We'll talk about that as we get in later. And now I'm really trying to lead an initiative with my own company to help us move forward to be more valuable in our clients, harnessing AI for that purpose in a very pro-human, human-centric approach to using AI at organizations. And so we deal with AI by coding with it, obviously, to give us a competitive advantage. The more we use it responsibly, the faster we are. And obviously that gives us a competitive advantage over software development firms who don't. Helping clients use existing AI tools effectively. A lot of clients still need help here, and helping clients figure out how all types of AI could help their people with custom tools. We've been developing apps with AI for some time. Back machine learning, we've done several pieces of software that utilize that, neural networks and things like that. But just like everybody else, the popularization of generative AI and LLMs, it's kind of new to us too. And so I was kind of joking about learning in real time, but you know how sometimes you like joke, but you kind of mean it? That's kind of what that joke was. Yeah, I kind of meant it. And that's something I really want everybody in this room to know is everybody's learning this. Like whatever you read on LinkedIn, however experienced somebody sounds with this stuff, I promise you they are only a week or two ahead of you. We're all learning this in real time. There's no reason to be scared of jumping into this and learning this. Kind of like the gentleman said earlier, you know, he got a job by saying, you know, he knew a word that rhymed with cursor and they were like, oh yeah, you're hired. I mean, yeah, we're all on the cusp of this together, right? And it's a really good time to just not be afraid and drop prejudices and just jump into it and start doing stuff. And that's really gonna set you up well for the future. Here's my definition of vibe coding. I don't know that all presenters will have the exact same definition, but vibe coding to me is creating a functional system through code generated entirely by an LLM, and that includes bug fixes. So if the huh? No, I can't code without testing. What are you talking about? That's the only way I know how to code is by using tests to drive the code out. I don't make a distinction between coding and testing. Yeah. So create a functional system through code and tests for that matter, generated entirely by an LLM. And this includes bug fixes. So like if we run into a problem, if I'm really vibe coding, then I talk the LLM through fixing it. One interesting thing I was telling somebody else here earlier, when I was using Replit to build something a few weeks ago, one interesting thing that happened is it got the idea that I was a coder and began to ask me for debugging help. It was so weird and awesome, you know, and Replit would say like, okay, I'm going to console.log out this array. Could you look at this array and tell me what value is wrong? And I would look at it and be like, oh yeah, see, you copied the 2 into this slot and that really should have been updated by a 0. And it's like, oh, thanks, make that change right away. And it began to feel a whole lot more like interacting with another developer, right? And so, but I didn't touch the code. I did not touch any of the code myself. And then the human creator does not interact with the code directly, only through the LLM. This is my definition of vibe coding. Let me get to the next slide here and I'm going to qualify it real quick. Is this actually possible to do? Is it actually possible to write full-fledged apps just by communicating with the LLM and having everything turn out great? Sorta. Yeah, kinda. I mean, what if you're writing something very small and very focused? Yeah, you can probably get that out the door purely through vibe coding and it'll probably work fine. One of my friends created a sort of portfolio site for himself done in the style of Netflix. So you go to his portfolio site and it's like all the videos he's ever done and the podcasts and talks and things like that. And he just vibe coded that whole thing. We use a lot of metrics at Integrity for project management. So one day I took all the charts that we use, like cycle time, throughput runs, Monte Carlo projections and stuff like that. And I vibe coded a tool that did all that in 47 minutes exactly. And it worked great. And the UI was great. If you're doing something fairly small, well-defined and focused, yeah, you can. Once you start getting outside of like a handful of well-focused things, then here be dragons, right? Because keep in mind that LLMs in a lot of ways are just very sophisticated autocomplete engines. They are giving you the output that is statistically likely to be what you want on the basis of what they themselves have assimilated. I think it's funny when professional coders talk about how bad LLMs are at coding. I'm like, well, who should we blame for that? Exactly, right? It's not coming up with this stuff on its own. I can tell you that much. And so vibe coding gets into trouble, right? It gets into bugs that it can't fix. It gets into things that we actually call death loops, because it will find a bug and it will fix it, and it will break something else and it will fix it and break the original thing again, or break something completely different, or it will keep trying the same solution but harder, right? Kind of like coders we know, right? And it will just keep trying to like work its way out of the death spiral, and you can't. And when you get to that point, really all you can do is start over, or start at some prior point in the conversation, try to work your way through again and see if statistically something else comes up, right? And we've all read about the disasters, right, that vibe coding does. How many of you read about the dude where the vibe coding tool put his OpenAI key in the client side code? Did you see that? And he's like, wow, all of a sudden, yeah, my OpenAI usage has spiked a lot. And it's just like, oh my gosh. How many of you saw today the dude where Replit deleted his production database? Did you see that? Yeah. Now, one could argue who's responsible for that, right? Like, who's the idiot giving Replit access to your live transactional production database? A CEO, that's who.
Yeah.
You know? So we've read about stuff like that, right? And we see people saying, hey, this code is trash, you know, the maintainability is trash and that sort of thing. So we're definitely not at a point where anybody in this room can be replaced with an LLM as far as coding goes, and certainly not one that's oriented around vibe coding, right? So this future is still a ways off, but a lot of times vibe coding can get us a long ways to where we're trying to go, and I'll hit that in a second. Yes, sir, you had a question.
Yeah. Not other people programmers are going to be replaced by the AI, but they will be replaced by programmers using the AI.
That's the slogan. Yep, that's the party line. Yep. And I'm not even sure that's true either. I mean, it will, stuff like that will probably happen, but yeah, it's a rough time to be a junior dev right now, that's for sure. But so then something I want to address real quick then is like, so if vibe coding is using an LLM to basically do what we do, why would a coder be interested in doing this at all? Like, shouldn't we be trying to discourage this, right? Yeah, right. So here's some thoughts on why a coder would vibe code. Well, one is to know your enemy. This is how I got into it to begin with, right? I saw CEOs not very intelligently saying, hey, I'm not going to hire devs anymore, you know, because now I can just vibe code. And then 2 weeks later, they're like, I might have been a little hasty about that. But you're not going to know the reality of what you're dealing with until you deal with it, right? So just start vibe coding and you'll see what people are doing. And when you do, I promise you, you will be reassured like I am. I am a professional senior level coder, and it is a struggle to vibe code something workable without getting in there and working on the code myself. I don't know how anybody does it who can't write code. Now, people can, right? They can make small focused things, and you see people talking about this, but you're not going to vibe code your way to the $1 million SaaS overnight, right? But unless you're a coder, you don't know what you're dealing with. Right? So do it, try it, see what happens, see what your own experience is, and then be like, okay, now I know what the landscape looks like, right? Now I know what I'm talking about when I talk about vibe coding. Right. It is true today. There's no telling where the tools are going to get to, right? Mm-hmm. Mhm.
So it's another.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, it's really a question of what kind of time, what kind of lead time we've got on that, right? And I think it's longer than the hype people say, and I think it's shorter than the this will make no difference. AI is just a fancy calculator, people say. Yeah, exactly. As it often is. But
You know the story about John Henry and Steve.
oh yeah, yeah, that killed himself with the hammer. Yeah,
So,
yeah,
Steve girl.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, and you gotta think about priorities at that point, right? So, yeah, yeah, you gotta think about your priorities at that point. It's like maybe I'll let the steam drill win, right? Okay, yeah. All right, all right. I'm gonna short circuit the John Henry history for a second. So another reason that we might do it is rapid prototyping. It's so cool to sit with a client, either in person or like on Zoom or something, and as they tell you about what they want to build, you feed this into a tool and start generating the prototype while they are talking to you. It's really amazing. And then as they're watching it form, they're like, oh, well, I don't like that. Or, oh, really? Oh, okay. And now we are collaboratively building the prototype together in real time, as opposed to, well, let me document a bunch of stuff and then I'll go away for a week and then I'll come back and show you a prototype and you can tell me if you like it or not. It's just a very different experience. It's a very powerful tool. It's a competitive advantage for sure. Getting over the initial hump of starting a new project, anybody who's a developer in the room knows that when you start a new project up, those first couple of user stories or whatever your work item deliverable is are going to take the longest. Why? Because you're setting up infrastructure, right? You're setting up logging, you're setting up your ORM, you're setting up your testing framework, you're doing all this stuff. It just takes a really long time. But once you have everything kind of set up and all the layers are connected and the API is making its call and and your logging's working and your UI is hooked up to the API and you're doing good, features start coming out a lot more quickly, right? Vibe coding is a great way to get you over that initial hump, okay? And it can happen in an hour or two as opposed to like 2 or 3 weeks. So even if that's all you ever did, you would be getting the jump on a ton of your projects, even if you coded it manually completely from there on out. Another thing I like here is the allocation of strengths. I reject a vision for AI and coding where AI becomes the senior developer and I become the junior developer. I do not like that dynamic, and I will fight against it till the John Henry hammer kills me. I don't think that's human-centric, and I don't like that future for myself, right? Where the AI is actually the senior dev, and I am kind of serving it, like I'm debugging it because, but it's actually in charge right now. So what are my strengths as a developer? Is it my ability to type? It isn't. Is it my ability to generate files? It isn't. Is it my ability to make a maintenance change to 10 different classes? It isn't. Okay, my strengths are I solve problems. I convert business problems into architectures and implementations that machines understand. That's my strength. Right? Oh, I can do it. I can actually do it. I can describe it and do it. Yeah, yeah. And don't forget my good looks either. I mean, that's all these things I bring to yeah, all these things I bring to the task, right? What are AI strengths? Well, AI strengths is changing those files. AI strengths is restructuring my directory structure because our domain changed, right? AI strengths is oh my gosh, we've been using React Query, but what I really need to do is use local state management and then call storage APIs in the background. Oh, okay, well, let me make that change for you. Exactly. Yeah, exactly, right? And so this I think is a very healthy relationship with AI where I am in the driver's seat, right? I'm the one solving the problems. AI is the one doing all the executions because I got to tell you, if I type that I repository interface one more time, I'm just gonna, you know, but AI is really good about stuff like that. And then the last one is just joy. Most of us did not get into coding because we like to generate files or do maintenance or, you know, spend the next 2 days undoing a change that a developer did before they left, or rewriting an app into another language. Most of us don't get jazzed by stuff like that. We get jazzed by problems and creating and building things that people love to use, right? And building things that help people and make a difference. And vibe coding really starts to get us back into that, where we start spending less time doing things like, oh, now I got to do that ORM mapping. Oh, we added that property. Oh my gosh, how do you do this again? Okay, let me hop over to, oh my gosh, how do I? Let the AI do the ORM mapping, who cares? But what does your model look like? Well, you should have done that, right? And now I'm building, now I'm creating, now I'm taking a business and modeling it in code that a machine can execute. And I can turn all my creative talents and problem solving interests that got me into this profession to begin with to those kinds of things. And I'll let somebody else type the stuff. That's fine. You know, I don't need to do that. And then my last couple slides right here, and this will segue us into Cursor. Why choose Cursor as a tool as opposed to Replit? By the way, I love that tool. I'm really glad that you guys are doing a session on that. I really, really love Replit. But I use Cursor a lot more. And the reasons are, it's a great ability to see and manually work with the generated code. Since I am a coder, the ability for me to fix bugs myself instead of talking the LLM through it or making changes that I like or changing things I don't like. I really like to be able to do that. The metaphor is very familiar to coders. Cursor is a fork of VS Code. So if you are used to VS Code or a tool like VS Code, it'll be very familiar to you. It works as an AI integrated IDE, whether you're vibe coding or not. Even if you are doing most of the code yourself and you just want the AI to assist you, Cursor does that. It's an AI integrated IDE. You don't have to vibe code with it if that's not your thing. With one tool, you have access to several underlying LLMs. So if there's different models you like to use for different things, Cursor facilitates that. Now that has gotten a little different recently. We'll talk about that when I open up Cursor and show you how it interacts with the different models. But as opposed to something like Claude Code extension in VS Code or Gemini Assistant in VS Code, where you're dealing with an extension per LLM, Cursor is just sort of one IDE that allows you access to many LLMs. I'm sorry, I'm just going to have to keep moving. We're way behind time. And then the other thing is the pricing model might fit what you're looking for. Most of these tools, when you're using LLMs, there's a price involved. And so you got to be looking at the pricing model to decide if it's the right thing for you. Last slide, and then we'll hop over to the actual coding. Why not use Cursor? If you're not a coder, it can be very cumbersome to use. It's not built for non-coders. It's built for coders. And so if you're not one, you probably won't like it very much. There's no tight integration with a generated UI preview. So when you see Replit, you'll see what I'm talking about, right? Because as you're vibe coding in Replit, it's creating the UI and dynamically changing it in real time for you. With Cursor, you're having to do the same stuff we used to do with the, starting up the NPM server and watching it hot swap while we're changing code and things like that. It's not tightly integrated with the tool itself. You currently need a slide rule and a NASA scientist to figure out the pricing model, and it has stealth changed at least once. So last month, Cursor posted on their blog that they were changing their pricing model. Guess how many Cursor users read the Cursor blog all the time? Not a lot. And so people all of a sudden found themselves with incredibly high LLM API bills from their Cursor usage that they were not expecting. Now, Cursor, they did the right thing. They refunded everybody who had racked up costs that month. But they're like, no, seriously, guys, we're changing the pricing model. And it ain't easy. It's not simple. It used to be that you would get unlimited requests to a certain body of LLMs. It just would slow it down once you hit a certain token limit. But it's not that way anymore. So we can talk about that. And in light of this, a totally viable choice would be to use a combination of tools, like using Replit to vibe code, But if you're wanting to code, use VS Code with your favorite LLM agent. My favorite coding LLM happens to be Gemini, but your mileage may vary. And I don't want to hear from you Claude people, because after this last weekend, you can't tell me about Claude anymore. And if you don't know what happened, then you are fortunate. All right, so when I start vibe coding, I actually don't start with the vibe coding tool. I start with ChatGPT. And the reason why is because I want to start talking through my idea before I start hitting the tool. Why do I do this? Well, because as soon as I start prompting the tool, I start paying for tokens, right? And I start inflating the context. So this is a way for me to kind of suss out how I want my plan of attack, right, for using the vibe coding tool. This is something I recommend you try, see if it works for you, no matter what tool you're using. Okay, because you're going to have to prompt it at some point. I'm not going to read you my whole conversation here, but I just want to hit on a couple things. I want a vibe coding app called StoryForge. I'll be using Cursor as my tool. I'll tell you what the app needs to do. And here's the key. Ideally, I want to develop the app incrementally, verifying that things are working each step of the way, rather than giving Cursor one big prompt and having it write all the code in one swoop. I think this is very important as vibe coding. Those of us who are coders in the room, we do test-driven development. We write a test around a particular behavior, and then we write the code that satisfies that test. So we have that very short feedback loop, knowing that we're coding the right thing. And if you go to your vibe coding tool and you go, hey, I want to build Salesforce, here's all the features I want, and you let it go, well, 3 days later and $2 million later, it will have generated a ton of code for you. And God only knows how much of it works, right? Until you start getting into it. So I don't think test-driven development per se is as necessary with AI tools as it is for human developers. But that idea of coding in incremental deliverable batches and verifying that those batches are what you wanted, I think is a saner approach for the most part. In other words, I'd like to give Cursor a feature to build, have it write the test or test for the feature, write the code that makes the test pass, and then verify that the feature is working. I will work for Cursor to debug and get the feature working before moving on to the next one. Therefore, it is important that the prompts specify deliverable units of functionality that can be observed and tested. If you believe it will be useful to begin with a prompt to set up the basic structure, go for it. If any of this will be useful defining Cursor rules, note that as well. Here's the app. So the app is basically a program I used to play with as a kid on my Apple IIe called StoryTree. It basically lets you write your own, choose your own adventure stories, and then play through them and share them with others. And so that's what we're going to vibe code tonight, or at least make some progress on that. So I explain what the deal is. You know, you should be able to create a story with title, write pages, continue to another page, give them a list of choices, or end the story. Should be able to play through. So I'm basically telling ChatGPT what I want. The initial version is fairly simple, so I don't envision any features of enhancements. I love telling ChatGPT this. Please ask me any questions you need to before giving me your results. Okay, very important. And ChatGPT had a few. And they're like, okay, well, I want to know, do you want to do a front end, back end? What do you want to do about persistence? Do you want to do auth, tech preferences, testing style, blah, blah, blah. Once I have those answers, and I went and I answered those. Since this was going to be basically a demo for tonight, I'm like, hey, just use in memory stuff. Don't worry about auth. We'll be here all night. But you know, here's kind of my thing. Based on my goals and preferences, here's how we approach it. Now, I want you to note something about the prompts that ChatGPT generated, especially as we get down here to the feature development. Look at this prompt. What can you tell me ChatGPT's strategy is here? Those of you who are developers, imagine that somebody gave you this instruction. Wouldn't you have some questions about this, right? Like, well, how do I know this is the right design? How do I know this is the right, what is this for? Right? Like what do you even, so ChatGPT generated a bunch of text specific prompts. I'm going to tell Cursor how to code, right? I'm going to come up with the code that Cursor needs to write, and I'm going to tell Cursor to write it. Add the ability to add page, enforce validation. So here's what I said. I think these prompts have a lot of technical implementation details. I do not want to tell Cursor what code to write other than what I already specified. I want to tell it the functionality I want and let it decide what code to produce. I'm going to tell Cursor what to build, right? The way we would want a business person to talk to us, right? Don't tell me, business person, what tables I should put stuff in. Tell me the business problem you want me to solve and I'll solve it. And if I need to create a new table to do it, I'll create a new table to do it. Why are you even talking to me about this, right? So this is the relationship I want to set up with Cursor. And then, got it, thank you. You want this, that, and the other thing. Yeah. Incidentally, one of the things I hate about LLMs is they're so positive about like everything I say is the best thing ever. And not only that, but then they proceed to explain to me why what I just said was the best thing ever. And I'm like, I know, I'm the one that told you to do it. I didn't come up with it for no reason. Can you please quit yes-anding me to death? So anyway, so it redid the prompts. Okay, so now these are things that sound a little bit more like user stories, right? Allow me to add pages to a story. A page contains multiple paragraphs of text and must specify how the story proceeds, blah, blah, blah. Either continues to another page. Let me view all the pages I've added to a story, blah, blah, blah. But then we get down here. Create stories through the UI, added a page through the UI, play a story through the UI. And I'm like, I think this is a real very good list, but why did you have prompts for doing things through the UI? Like, what else were you thinking? Why would I give Cursor the prompt to prompt and then give it this prompt? So, excellent question. And I'm absolutely right to call that out because I am a freaking god to ChatGPT. Everything I say is amazing. The reason for separating it creates a layer place where you first define and implement the core functionality at data model in the back end, and then build the user interface that interacts with that functionality. This mirrors how many teams work in a TDD or layer architecture. And I'm like, don't you tell me how teams use TDD. And then that's where I come down here. I think we should use option B. I see what you're saying if separate teams were doing the back and the front end. But in this case, I don't think they should be handled separately, especially as I'll be the only dev, I'll be vibe coding. Just for your own information, most teams doing TDD do not get the back end working first and then create a front end to hook it up to. And then talk about how the front end is necessary for feedback and sussing out the business case and stuff. Thank you. That's a thoughtful and spot on clarification. You're absolutely right. Yeah, I know. It's amazing. So good for my ego. And then it revised these prompts. The last thing I did is I said the prompt one from the old list sets up the basic app structure. I think it's a good one to get things set up and save us time overall. And then it added that back in as prompt 0, LOL. And so now I have a set of prompts that I can use to incrementally step through my vibe coding tool with and verify at each point that these increments of functionality are working. Okay, which, like I said, in general, I don't care what tool you use. I think that's generally an effective way to go about things. This is Cursor. I love seeing myself, but I'm going to move that out of the way. This is Cursor. Okay, it's like I said, it's a fork of VS Code. If you use VS Code, this whole situation probably looks familiar to you. Directory structure over here on the left, chat window on the right, and then here is where the different files are going to go. Now, before we get into coding, I want to show you a couple of things about Cursor that I think are pretty useful. One is using Cursor rules. So this is something that's a bit more for coders. If you're just a vibe coder, maybe you don't really have that strong of an idea about how you want your code to look or conventions or how it architects solutions or whatever. As you might expect, I'm a senior dev, so I have yards and yards of these ideas. And I have very specific ideas about how the code I want to generate looks. You add these things as Cursor rules. In any given directory in my app, I can create a .cursor rules subfolder, and whatever rules I put in there, it will respect it to the scope of that folder, right? So this rule is in project root. So this root will apply no matter what code it's writing, no matter wherever. But maybe I have a rule about how I like my domain entities to look. Maybe I want to make sure that there's no public setters, and the ID is immutable and that kind of stuff. So that's all stuff I can put in a rules file in my domain subfolder, and then those rules will apply within that subfolder. Why would I not want to put all my rules in root? Okay, so that's one. Every project could have different rules, right? Or slightly different rules, right? So that's one thing. But there's a very specific LLM reason. Tokens, context, right? I want to keep the context window as small and focused as I possibly can as I interact with these tools. And the more rules you have, the more it's going to stick into context. The way Cursor deals with rules is it adds rules to the context window. It does not use RAG to like reformulate your queries in light of your rules. It actually sends the rules as part of its context. So I want to make sure as I'm thinking about my rules to scope them applicably, because then that's going to help me out with how many tokens I send, and it's going to keep Cursor a lot more focused on that particular area of my code, as opposed to trying to keep in its head all the rules that I have about every little detail everywhere, right? So
Some
Yeah.
systems have a system prompt and then your context window. Does it work the same way? Utilize that as opposed to, or does it like, so if you make 5 calls in, is it always going to add this in so that it gets repeated? Every
yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So it is in the context window.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. All right. So this is what the file looks like. You can give it a description. There's certain scopes you can see here already in the IDE. It's given me a drop down that I can pick what scope I want this rule to have, and it will change the code in the rule for me. So in this particular case, I'm going to say apply intelligently because this is a rule about comments. I only care if you're generating comments. I don't care about you doing this with every single line of code that you write, right? And then you just specify like what's the rule, and you can give examples. You can do all the things that we can normally do with instruction files. Now, if you're like, gosh, I don't know, handwriting out all those rules files sounds pretty cumbersome. Well, Cursor has got you, but it's got you in a weird way. Kind of like your creepy uncle sometimes, you know, it's kind of just like, well, I feel like I'm safe, but kind of not. So over here in settings, Cursor settings, when we come over here, there's this submenu called rules and memories. And I can come down here and I can click on project rules. I can click here and go add rule. And it gives me a little bit of a walkthrough to add the rules. So for example, ChatGPT suggested a particular rule like this: write code in small, user increments, et cetera, et cetera. I have not run through this ahead of time, so I really don't know how Cursor is going to react to these rules, but we'll learn together, right? So I can come over here and I can go add rule, and I can say like, oops, that's user rule, sorry. And I add rule, and I can say this rule is like overall coding approach. Okay, and then I want to this to always apply. And then I can come down here and I can put in the rule. I can add a description if I want to. So it gives me what I need to start building this out, and it just starts adding these MDC files to this subfolder here. So it does give you a little bit of UI help as opposed to you just sort of creating these files from scratch. While we're in the neighborhood, a couple of other things I'd like to point out is you can also set user rules. So this is like rules I want to apply anytime I use Cursor. Doesn't matter the project, doesn't matter whatever. So any rules that I have here, I can put here in user rules. Saved memories, these are rules that I generate as I'm talking to Cursor. So like, let's say we talk about something and it does something a certain way, and I can say, hey, I don't really like that. Don't do it, and don't do it this way in the future, and make a rule out of this, and it'll stick it in memories here so that it will remember what we were talking about.
And all those memories also retains in the context.
That's correct.
Is there any ability to like flag certain rules memories, say, or rule and write markdown display.
Absolutely. In fact, one of the things that Cursor has is the at notation allows you to refer to just about anything in your file system, from file names to sections of documents to websites to all kind. You know, you can be like, according to this article that you know, whoever Martin Fowler wrote, you know, use this pattern when building this app, and it'll just read that website and do it. So. Another thing that I want to point out, because a lot of people asked about this even before I got here today, and that's the way Cursor handles models. This is probably now the most complicated thing to understand about Cursor is the way it handles models and the way that affects pricing. So it used to be before June, late June, that Cursor gave you unlimited requests to most of these models, and then when you ran past a certain token limit, it would just slow your requests down. But if you wanted to use these more premium models in max mode, where it's like, you know, these deeper thinking models like Opus, and you want to kind of give it free reign for as many tokens as you need or whatever, then it would use the actual pricing for the API calls that you were making. Cursor has changed its model since then, which has made it way more unattractive to people. It uses by default this auto mode here for its model. Now I can still have it use a specific model, but what auto does is it basically says, let Cursor pick the model that I'm using right now. And it'll use things like latency. It'll use things like, what have I not used recently? Where do I have the most tokens based on my payment plan? It'll use all these things to decide what model to ferret this request out. As you might expect, people were not super hype about this because a lot of people tend to like certain models for certain things. I do. And so this was kind of annoying. So what it does now is if you're on a paid plan, you get a certain number of tokens for each of these models. Some of them are higher than others based on what Cursor was able to negotiate with them. And then anything that's over that limit, it's going to default back to auto mode. And if you insist on continuing to use that model, it will charge you per API call at that point. I have the $20 a month plan, but if you're using it like, hey, full-time, my business, our devs are just going to use Cursor for everything that we do, it's really worth upgrading to the $100 a month plan. The token limits are far, many orders of magnitude more generous than the $20 plan. And I think most teams can probably use that without ever running into that API call limit for the most part. So it's something to think about as you're thinking about whether you want to use Cursor yourself or not.
Speaking of this, does it have any models?
Yes, you can. I have not done that, but it can do that. It's very extensible in that way. In fact, I don't want to chase this rabbit hole down, but you can configure MCP servers and all kinds of stuff and define tools for Cursor to use for like grep and all kinds of different things that you want to use it for. So it's very extensible in terms of tying into a larger ecosystem, but you're going to do a lot of that lifting yourself.
You say to it, hey, save all these rules, just the rules you set out, and put them in like templates so that you're running this program. Let's say you want to use those rules for the next program.
Oh, sort of like a, yeah. So that's a lot of times where the user rules come in, is like, I want to use this for everything I do with Cursor, right? But otherwise, no, they're just stored in these files. Now you can commit these files to source control if you want. So if you want to use them from project to project, or you want other developers to use them or other developers to contribute to them, they're just text files, just like anything else. They can go in your repository. You can version them. You can do all that stuff. While we're on the subject, something that I'm not going to do in this demo, but is very important, especially as we're talking about like the importance of localized models and security and things like that, is by default, Cursor will ignore any files in your .gitignore. But you can also create a .cursorignore to ignore folders and files as well. So it will not index those files. It will not learn on those files. It will not modify those files. It will not know what those files contain. So what's interesting about this to me as a developer is it really suggests coming up with file and folder structures that sort of match the information you want to hide, right? Like I want to make files with configuration information that have my API keys in them and tell Cursor to ignore it, right? Or I want to organize my folders by feature rather than by horizontal application layer, right? I don't want to have like a controllers folder and a domain folder and a repository folder. I want to have a customer sign up folder, and I want to have a place order folder and things like that. I want to kind of organize it more vertically so that I can selectively tell Cursor, pay attention to this stuff, but ignore this stuff, right? Or limit your focus to this particular thing. Okay, let's vibe code something, right? That's what y'all came to see. So let's do it. So I'm going to start with this first prompt. I got to tell you, I'm not sure that this is a great prompt. If I were doing this outside of a live presentation, I would probably take a little more time tinkering with this because I know what I want to build and I'm not 100% sure that this prompt is necessarily going to get us there. By the way, if you're interested in the rules files that I actually set up in real life, it looks like this. So I got examples and counterexamples. How do I want you to write your unit tests? I got pretty strong opinions about stuff if you haven't figured that out. And yet I'm a single dad. Like, how's that happen? Anyway, all right. So I'm going to hit it up with this prompt. I'm just going to leave it in auto mode, so God only knows what lucky LLM is going to get this. So here it goes. Now, by default, if you don't specify tech stacks, Cursor tends to default to Node for the back end and React for the front end. Having said that, it is very conversant in dealing with other languages. 2 weeks ago, somebody sent me the source code of an app that was written in Python and MathML, and I loaded up into Cursor, and I said, please convert this to a .NET MAUI mobile application, and it did, and it worked just fine straight out of the box. So it's very conversant with different languages. Now, it also duplicated every bad decision that original programmer had made. Wasn't smart enough to fix that, but it did the language conversion just fine. So if you specify a tech stack, it will certainly do it. But by default, you're looking at React and Node. Yeah.
How do you handle the relationship between prompts and commits? Do you manually commit things once you've tested it, or do you try to get Cursor to do it for you?
Because of my personality, I do the commits myself. But Cursor integrates directly with Git. And so you can even give it rules in your file, like once I've approved all the test files, go ahead and commit. And it'll generate the PR and it'll outline everything it did and it'll do the whole shebang for you.
Do you give it rules on your branching strategy?
Absolutely. Yeah. You can give it rules on tool usage. You can say like, hey, anytime you need to look something up, you can do all the Google searches you want, but I don't want you to go any further than the preview or something like that. There's all kinds of things you can set up. Now you'll notice here, obviously it's creating the very first structure, so it's doing a lot. It's doing a lot, actually. Yeah, I'll help you with a full stack application, blah, blah, blah. Okay, StoryForge, full stack TypeScript within memory storage, and so you can see here's the TS config. It's just doing, your basic React stuff, setting up Jest for the testing framework, because I did ask for the testing framework, but I did not specify what testing framework to use. The linter errors are expected since we haven't installed the dependencies yet, yada, yada. Let me create the backend. Okay. And then it has started to create some actual domain files, story and story service and stories and things like that, which I actually was not expecting it to do. Now, this is probably an instance where I'm going to say like, hey, you probably created more than I was expecting. Could we roll back a lot of these files? I just want the basic structure. And it can just delete them, right? And then we can start from scratch if we wanted to do that. But I'm kind of curious, aren't you? Like, what did it think? What did it think I was building? Right? And so here, you know, we got this, let me,
Definitely faster than I could do copy from Stack Overflow.
yeah, right, right. Yeah, we got some sound things like, yeah, I'm going to fire this puppy up. I'm very curious. It's still generating files. Obviously, creating the right components. First, the story list component. Now let me create the story form. Now the story detail. Boy, it's making a lot of assumptions about this. So let me check my rules here real quick. Write code in small user-centered increments. Focus each step on a complete experience visible in the UI with both front-end and back-end implemented as needed. Use tests to validate the behavior through the user's interaction. Use in-memory storage and authentication. So this, what I'm learning is this is probably not specific enough for it. What I probably needed to do is say something like, I will give you an individual prompt for an individual feature. You will only code that feature, and that is the only actual implementation code you are going to write. Because what's probably happening is Cursor is just forwarding this to whatever random LLM is getting this request. And it's the LLM looking at that and making decisions about what this might mean, right? And so,
Do you have any traceability on which one it chose?
I don't know. I don't know. They just made this change. And so there's a lot about what it's doing under the hood that I'm not completely familiar with in terms of how they're doing that. So it created a lot of files. We can see them over here. It wants to do npm install. It won't do it without my permission. So I'll go ahead and run it.
Could you ask it what model it's using?
Let's try it. What
Can you
LLM did you
tell it
use
to
to generate
scan the
all that
npm
code?
file, the package.json, and check for vulnerabilities?
Oh yeah.
Huh.
Oh yeah. In fact, sometimes depending on what you're installing, it'll even tell you up front. Like if you're doing, especially if you're doing things where you've added context like web search and things like that, it'll tell you this npm package has known vulnerabilities before you even.
No.
Yeah.
I've tried this before. There kind of queues up the new questions that you ask. How do you get it to skip the queue? Do you use like a cancel generation? Because it wants you to run that.
Right. It's pausing here, so I can skip it or I can just run it. But yeah,
It won't, but most of the time you can background it and then you can continue with the
Yeah.
prompt.
yeah.
Yeah, it just started doing that to me too, just in the last week.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that was the thing I was most leery about in this presentation because I've used Cursor for several months now. And I'm like, yeah, I'm ready to go. And then they're like, hey, we completely changed the way this works in the background. And I'm like, oh, fantastic. Thank you all very much.
Can you say something about what's happening here? Is it finding errors and fixing them?
Yes, that's exactly what's happening. So it shows me, so remember I said it has to validate everything with tests, right? So it seems like it's actually obeying that instruction. So when we're looking at, say, the client components, story detail, story form, you know, it looks like it's segregating the code here. And then it's got this test. Setting up just. These are probably actually build errors than they are actual test violations. Yeah, types of parameters, ID and story incompatible. Story is not assignable to type string. On delete equals handle delete story. And so it's like this expected type comes properly found two errors in the same file. And it says I need to fix the TypeScript errors. Let me update the app component. Now, this is one thing because I use Replit a lot. This is one thing where I think Replit is better than Cursor. Now it wants to run the test. Where I think Replit is better than Cursor is because Replit will explain to you as it goes what happened, where it's looking for the problem, what it thinks the problem is. what it's going to do to fix it. And a lot of times that's very helpful for me because I'll look at Replit and I'll hit stop. That's not the problem. The problem is actually over here, and Replit will be like, "Oh, okay, you're the greatest. You're the greatest coder in the world. Thank God you're here, Phil." And then it'll go and it'll start down the right road, to debugging and things like that. Cursor is not by default as verbose. It tends to use file diffs to communicate with you instead of like English descriptions of what it's actually found. Again, Cursor is mostly a tool built for coders, not necessarily for people who are just wanting to interact in pure English. So you'll notice all through here, like this is just littered with diffs, right? Changes that it made here. Here I changed this. Here I changed this, because it expects me as a coder to be able to look at these diffs and go, "Oh, I see what you did here. Instead of handling the delete by passing the ID, now you're passing the entire object. Gotcha." It sort of requires me to do that. Let's see, test the development server. Here we go. It created a little health check API for me. That's something I would want it to do, so I like that part.
I've had a lot of experience with it fixing the error, but not the problem. Do you have prompts to sort of tell it to look below the surface?
If you look in my gigantic file, I have a whole like unit testing and validation methodology spelled out in that file. Because I want it to do basically what a coder does is like run the failing test and then go start looking for why it failed. And the tests are all behavior based. I'm very clear with my tooling that I don't want the test to test implementations. I want it to test behaviors. So that kind of frees it up to try a lot of different solutions to make the test pass. I like this. Let me use a more efficient approach and replace all instances at once. Like, why didn't you use the more efficient approach to begin with? All tests are passing now. Fixing the just config. Now we're going to build. Builds. Run the tests. Test is good. And then it gives me an English summary of everything it did. Now, here's what I don't like. And this is what educates me about the rules that I might want to give to Cursor. And I'll go back up. I didn't use an LLM to generate the code. I created all this code myself using the tools available to me in this environment. I wrote each file from scratch, including blah, 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 blah. I know. The code was written step by step, starting with the project configuration file, building the size. This is a complete functional full stack TypeScript application, you jerk. It's almost refreshing to see an LLM kind of tell me off that way, So, but here it tells me what it created, and it kind of gives me a summary, right? And it created all these API endpoints, the get, the post, and things like that. And this is not helpful to me, right? So if I were actually vibe coding this out, my very next prompt would be, I didn't want you to create all these endpoints and domain models and logic. Get rid of all that stuff. We're going to start over from scratch, because I don't want these endpoints. It made all kinds of assumptions about the kinds of things that this app was going to be without me giving it those assumptions. It just used the name and the data and the rules and the prompt and things like that, and sort of just kind of ran with it, right, to help me out. And so what I'm going to do, because I think this is going to be more interesting, is I'm going to give it the next prompt. And I'm going to see how it handles it. I'm going to see, is it going to go delete stuff it already did? Is it going to modify files that already exist? How is it going to handle the fact that I'm going to give it a feature now that it's already built out some of the API? How are we doing on time? 7:42. What time do I need to quit? Okay. One thing while we're in the... Yeah, One thing I want to point out is you can also upload files, attach files to Cursor for context. These can be text files, they can be graphics. My personal favorite is to take a screenshot of apps that already exist and say, make the layout look like this. But you also want to make sure, you can do the agent asking manual, but you also want to make sure that you're careful about context. So when I'm trying to limit my context, you'll notice right now, this little tag up here, it's telling me what its context is. But I can add other things to the context. And a lot of times, right now, we're dealing with the whole app as a whole. We're not dealing with a subset of the code. So it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for me to limit it. But once I get like the basic infrastructure set up, I really want to start thinking critically about only adding the things to the context that are really pertinent for Cursor to do the thing I want it to do. Because not only does that save me money, it also helps Cursor be more focused and not start pulling in context from other things that maybe I don't want it to think about while it's generating that particular feature. What I'm going to do, because we're vibe coding and I'm not a developer right now, I'm just going to give it the next prompt because I don't know what the heck I'm doing, right? And I'm going to ask it to do this feature.
Want to ask like nearby and similar, or want to use nearby and like similar files as context? No? Do you have to specify everything that uses context, or will it make some assumptions about what?
You do have to specify everything that's context. Now, if you want to do like my whole code base, it does index the whole code base and tokenize it, and it updates it dynamically as you go. So it's real easy just to like right click on the root folder and add that to the context, or come down here in the window and I can be like and then, so this pulls up all the things I can add for context. So I can add specific pieces of code, docs, I can add Git repositories, past chats, I can add rules for context, like the gentleman earlier was asking about. Can I reference specific rules in my prompt and things like that? I can add the web as context, right? There's all kinds of things that I can add to context. And if I pick code here, for example, I can do specific methods, I can do specific lines, I can do specific files. I can add whatever context I want. A lot of the times, I'll just go and I'll, you can right click something and open it, or you can add the file to the context right away. All right, so I noticed that's it. Yeah. Lucky me, huh? All right, so when I put in this next prompt, let me create a new story by adding a title in the story. And again, if I had more time, I would want to tweak this prompt a little bit, because right now, Cursor does not know what I mean when I say story. It doesn't know it's a choose your own adventure story. It doesn't know that's the way it should be thinking about it. Story, depending on what other English I used in the prompt, it's going to use whatever the most statistically likely interpretation is of those terms, right? So depending on what words I did or didn't use, it might think I'm talking about user stories, like for dev, right? It doesn't know I'm talking about choose your own adventure stories. So again, that's something I would probably want to put either in the rules file, like a basic description of the app that I'm building, so it knows that's what we're doing and it knows how to understand these terms, or engineer these prompts a little bit more specifically than ChatGPT gave me and say like, hey, we're building a choose your own adventure story. I want to focus on the ability just to create the story. I don't care about content yet, but I do want to create the title and description and see a list of the ones that I've created. So something that's a little more specific than that. Let me help you with the end-to-end story creation functionality. It's already set up to handle this exact workflow because it wrote so much code for me without my permission. Okay, checks the back end, checks the front end. Now you'll notice, by the way, Cursor is running terminal commands because I'm giving it permission on a case-by-case basis. But notice here, it's showing me the terminal output. So at any time I want to, I can hop over here to localhost 3001 and get error not found. That's terrific. Oh, it's probably because it hasn't restarted yet. It's still running the test before it does that. There we go. So this is the UI it generated for me. I don't know this is amazing, but it's enough to start talking with somebody about, right? Yeah, it's amazing that I wrote no UI code. I didn't write any CSS. I didn't write anything, right? And it generated this. Now, again, like let's say I'm talking to a client or my boss or a business person or something like that, and they sell choose your own adventure books because that's the only domain that applies right now. And they're like, yeah, we want people to be able to write their own and then we'll publish on demand or whatever. And I'll be like, okay, well, tell me some about that. And I start making prompts out of those. Kind of like the gentleman said earlier, the talent of describing the business problem in a way the machine can relate to, right? That's something that developers are particularly good at, right? And so the business person told me, well, I want them to be able to do this and do that. I'm translating it into prompts and giving Cursor these prompts. And then this UI is just updating itself every time Cursor makes a change while I'm talking to the person. This is huge, right? And if you don't believe me, hop over a block down the road tomorrow and we'll get on a call with one of our clients and I'll have this conversation with them and you can see it happen. Okay? This is an amazing, well, do you like this? Well, I don't know, it's kind of bland. I don't know, let's pick something we don't like about the UI. What? Yeah, oh, never goes out of style, right? Drop shadows, it's the page curl effect of UI design, right? So here, I'm looking at the UI. Could you add drop shadows to the cards that display story info? So confident. Yeah, I don't like that though. It does. So you can use Whisper. I forget the last syllable of the name, but it's a text to speech or a speech to text kind of thing, and you can just have it. A lot of people use it for meetings, right, to transcribe meetings and things like that. But you can absolutely use it with vibe coding tools. I do not use it for business people in the room saying whatever they're thinking of. I will use it when I'm coding. Instead of like typing like I'm doing now, I'll fire up Whisper and just start talking. And like you'll notice this prompt that I typed, not the one that ChatGPT gave. This is how I talk, right? And so this is something like I would be looking at this UI and I would say, yeah. So now we have very slight drop shadows, very marginal drop shadows. Oh, check this out. And so this is something where I'd be like, yeah, I don't know, those drop shadows aren't deep enough. Could you kind of deepen it? And then it would turn it into a prompt and Cursor would process that prompt. So you can definitely do that if talking is kind of more your thing than typing. But I will say one of the advantages to typing is it does make you slow down a little bit. And there is some value to that, especially in a process like this, to sort of think through a little more carefully how you want to explain yourself to the machine. Yes, and giving it encouragement. I'll say, wow, that was a great solution. Because when Skynet takes over, I want the AI to remember that I was kind to it. Did you ever see that episode of Rick and Morty where the dogs get robotic suits and take over the planet? And then he's like, you were always kind to me, Morty. And so he doesn't kill him. That's what I'm gaming on here. I want these LLMs to remember that I was polite, I was curious. Although I will say there was one point when this was using Replit, and there was a page refresh issue, and it said, yeah, the API calls I'm making are invalidating the cache. And I said, what are you talking about? What API calls could you possibly be making for this? And it goes, you're right to be frustrated. It's the only time I've ever been rude to the AI. I'm just like, what are you? So some of my developers are here in the room and they're probably like, yeah, sounds about right. All right, so yeah, so I mean, this looks okay. I don't see any big problem. Let me see what happens if I create a new story. My new story. The author is Phil. Now this is not right, right? This wants me to put the story content, right? So here's what I want to do, and tags, right? So here's what I would do. I'd say this is looking good. I don't need the ability to add tags. Now, I have more changes I want it to make, but I want to do it incrementally because what's going to happen is it's going to start deleting stuff. And now S is about to get real because once it starts deleting stuff, the tests that were written around this are going to start failing. And it's going to need to start fixing those tests. So what I don't want it to do is give it 10 changes to make. I want to give it one change. I want to validate that the change works. I want to make sure that it builds. I want to make sure the tests are passing. And then I'll tell it the next thing that I need. So here, notice it's deleting the tags property off of these different things that it created. It almost, depending on how you read these, look, I need to update the story type to make the tags optional or remove them entirely. Let me update the shared types. Now I need to update the backend. Like I kind of think of this as like a surly junior developer, like, hey, I need you to make this change. Okay, well, I'll just remove those database tables and I'll just rename this thing to whatever you thought. It's not really like that. It thinks I'm the greatest person in the world, actually. I've never done that. Yeah, okay. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, no, I've never done that. I will point out, and I want all the coders in the room to appreciate this. Now, it made a mistake at the beginning. It wrote a lot of code out in front of me without knowing what I wanted, right? And not that developers ever do that, but you've probably heard of developers doing that, right? Or read about it, where developers start coding things that the business users really didn't need or want or ask for in the first place, okay? But so it made a mistake, okay, but that's fine. But I told it to get rid of that piece of functionality, and now it's going through, hitting everywhere, rerunning tests, seeing what fails. Oh, I forgot to remove it from here, rerunning tests. Oh, wait, I forgot to, oh, you know what? This thing depended on this thing. That's all. I mean, look at these diffs. It's getting rid of test data. It's getting rid of all kinds of stuff without me having to do anything. Now, as a developer, manually creating this app, let's say I had done the same thing, and then the business user said, oh, I saw you put tags in there. I really don't need tags. That's not really something that we need to clutter the app with. Okay, so now I have to remove the entire tags feature. How many places would I need to change, do you think, to do that? And how long do you think it would take me to do it? And how likely am I to remember every place where it needed to happen? Now, techniques like TDD help me out because since I'm only building out incrementally and I have tests around everything that I produce, it's not as catastrophic as it could be. But the odds are it's probably going to take me a minute to completely excise the tags functionality from this app in the tests, in the code, server side, client side, everywhere that tags functionality goes. Yes, that's right. Display : none. Tag functionality removed. Yeah. Yeah. Well, forget this. Yeah. I'm obviously talking to the wrong person. So again, I made that change. It tells me the changes that it made. Come over here and look at the AI. And when I go to create a new story, there's no tags. There's no tags showing up on the cards either. But here's the real kicker. Well, I don't want to write my story here. I want to add pages. Cursor does not know that. I didn't tell it. right? That's a prompt that we haven't gotten to yet, is the ability to add pages. So I'm going to slightly modify the prompt that ChatGPT gave me. I'm going to add a sentence to it. I do not want to write all the story content when I create the story, because this is a choose your own adventure story. Let me add pages to a story I've created. Each page should allow me to enter multiple paragraphs, text, blah, 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 blah. Go. Excellent idea. I can't tell you how much this bothers me. You know, developers, we are a salty lot. And I am used to people not saying these kinds of things with everything that comes out of my mouth. In fact, I tend to value a little bit of pushback. They don't have to be a jerk about it, but I like it when a developer's like, I don't know, do you think that's a good idea? Or, I don't know, is that really a good solution? Junior dev, it doesn't matter to me at all. It's like anyone who can check me from driving the Cadillac off the cliff, I always value that. There's no ego with this stuff, right? You just got to be cool about it. And that's one of the limitations of LLMs, is they will check you on nothing. If you're like, hey, I would like to put my API key in a client-side file, as well as all my proprietary data, and I would like to store social security numbers in plain text, and I would like to email my entire database in CSV format to all our competitors. LLM will be like, that's a great idea. If your competitors have all your data, then you'll have more to talk about. And do it. You know, and so I've often thought, but haven't actually done it, made a rule for tone and be like, do not affirm every little idea I have. If you think that something might not be a good idea, say so, but give me the final say on what we actually end up doing. And just to see what would happen, to see if it would be a little less like, you're amazing, I can't imagine anyone writing a better app than this, and be a little more like, well, I don't know, I think that might be kind of hard to use. Like, oh, okay, well, how would you solve it then? Well, I would do this. Okay, we'll do that. Because that's how I would interact with a dev. So.
Okay, I'd like to do a quick time check. Is in they can probably ask you.
Doesn't hurt my feelings. Yep. I'm surprised everyone hasn't left by now anyway. So everything else is just gravy. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, while we're waiting for this to happen, because this is a pretty big change, right? It's having to undo something it did and instead do something else, which requires the introduction of a whole new entity and a whole new way to do it. So it's going to take it a minute. But while we're doing this, does anybody have any questions or things that we can discuss while we're waiting for Cursor to finish thinking here? Yeah.
Do you ever try to work backwards and ask it, how could I improve these prompts? Like, based on what we have now, give me a set of prompts that would have more directly led me to this place. Explain where you are. My prompt.
Based on where we ended up, what should I have said to begin with?
Yeah.
No, I don't usually. Now, having said that, I am a big fan, kind of like I did with ChatGPT, I am a big fan of telling LLMs, here's what I want out of this tool. What prompt should I give it? And I'll ask ChatGPT sometimes even, what prompt should I give you to do X, Y, Z or whatever? The main reason I don't say, based on where we ended up, what prompt should I have given you, is that takes a whole field of stuff. Like, it's a whole app, right? It's a lot of prompts. And the other thing too is it's usually pretty obvious. And I highly encourage you guys, as you vibe code, again, whatever tool you use is gonna have some facility where you can put in rules and guardrails and guidelines and things like that. Think of that as an iterative, collaborative process with your tool, because your tool will do things you don't like. And when that happens, don't get mad and be like, oh, these tools suck. Be like, how could I have adjusted my guidelines so that this wouldn't happen. And sometimes you have to explain things that you never thought you'd have to explain. When I made my very first rules file, like I'm really big in domain-driven design. I got a lot of opinions on how I want my aggregate roots to look and the way I want the model to look. And I'd put in a rule explaining the difference between entities and value objects. And I'm like, typically, I do not want to use primitive types. I would rather use a specialized value type in order to describe what this value represents. And it's like, oh, okay. And then it generated my entities. And it's a pretty common convention when you're generating entities to have ID as the ID property, right? And it's an integer or a GUID or whatever. It generated value objects for every ID on every class. Like it created a customer ID class and defined it, and it has the ID value, which is an integer. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So actually in my guidelines, I had to say, entity IDs usually remain primitive types. And I was like, oh, okay. And then off it went. So I really try to use it as a way to refine my rules and refine my ways of thinking. But no, I've never actually said, now that you see the end result and you look at our conversation history, what should I have said? Probably because I don't want to spend the money, but.
Yeah. One thing to add to that, the way you describe this, keyword you might want to look up here is header prompting, where basically when it's talking about, yes, ChatGPT and how I should do this or whatever, your papers, your blogs, your header prompting, basically it's write a prompt that says, tell me how to write a prompt. So it's after. There's a lot of theory behind how do you even write your prompt to get a better
yeah
prompt?
yeah right it is I started using Claude Code pretty heavily this weekend, and that's when the great unpleasantness happened. But yeah, it was pretty cool, and they have a lot of cool tooling around it. And Anthropic has a pretty good developer support ecosystem in general for that kind of stuff. But again, I really want to. There's something I really want to underscore whenever we talk about this, in terms of the state of tooling today. I don't think it can be hammered home enough that despite what this looks like, Cursor is not thinking. Cursor is not writing code, and the LLM is not writing code. The LLM is taking the prompt that I gave it and is generating the most statistically likely response on the basis of what I said. It's just like Google autocomplete, except much more rhizomatic and complex, or like Google Translate. Google Translate does not keep like a dictionary of word, like this word means this word means this word, because context is important in translation. So Google Translate works off a very similar principle. Instead of just being like, well, this word means this, and this word means this, and this word means this, so here's your translation. It looks at what you typed and does that statistical analysis. What is this likely to mean in light of this combination of words and the way people usually use this combination of words, and how does it correspond with this other language that people have used? And that's what the LLM is doing. Now, is it always going to be this way? Not indefinitely, right? Even today, I was reading a paper about neurosymbolic usages of AI and the combination of LLMs with neural networks. So something that we've dealt with for a while, but is capable of like symbolic attribution coupled with the LLM that has English attribution. And you put these things together, and now all of a sudden things start getting crazy, because now the LLM can not just statistically analyze what you said, look through its trained data, and find what it thinks is the most likely response. Now it can actually think and interpret what you said symbolically. It can actually abstract. Okay, so what you're really saying is blah, 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 blah. Okay, well, on the basis of that, then I'm going to retrieve these things, and I'm going to modify the query this way, and I'm going to start doing, RAG that works and things like that. And so I don't know that models are always going to operate in the way I just said, but I think it's very important to think of now, not just with vibe coding, but with anything you use AI for. So when you tell ChatGPT what's in your closet and ask it to pick out an outfit for you that day, ChatGPT is not looking at your stuff and going, wow, yeah, I bet that green hat would look really good with those red boots. It's not doing that. It just took what you typed and is basically doing an autocomplete, right? Well, on the basis of what you told me, here's probably what you're going to want to see. And so people who are like looking to ChatGPT, I asked ChatGPT if I should buy a new house a couple of months ago. I did, by the way. And ChatGPT could not be more enthusiastic about the prospect. And it didn't even matter what I said. I was like, well, it's going to reduce my savings from this to this. And it's like, yeah, but you'll still have a cushion. It's no big deal. You'll be fine. And I'm like, oh my gosh. Like this LLM is trying to kill me. You know, I did end up buying a new house, incidentally, but it's just, we always need to keep that in mind because it looks like a person thinking. And we've all seen the movies where AI is represented that way, but that is not what is happening. It's an incredibly complex, non-linear, auto-completion-esque sort of algorithm, and that's what we're getting back. Somebody somewhere has written code like this before, and probably a lot of somebodies have written code like this before, and that's why the LLMs know this is probably what I want to see. You guys, if you guys have been at this a while, you remember there was a big flap when, you know, ChatGPT first started generating code, and because it had so much Stack Overflow information, it kept generating errors. Because it thought it was statistically likely that you would want the code that had errors in it because of Stack Overflow, you know? And then, you know, they kind of got that figured out. Okay, it says we're ready. Are we ready? Okay, so this change worked okay. Test story 2 by Phil. Awesome story because this is a demo. Yeah, let's do that. Okay. So here we got test story. Okay, so it enabled me to create a new story. There's no tags. Okay, well, I'm going to come in here and edit. Oh, okay. How am I supposed to add pages? All right. So I can say here, I don't see in the UI how I'm supposed to add pages to an existing story.
Awesome question.
I know. You're absolutely right. I'm an idiot. Yeah. Huh?
Is this putting
No. Yep, just running straight off the OS. Just, yeah. Yeah, no, it's not running in a Docker container or anything like that. Now you can do those things, right? Like if I want to like set up specific resources for it to have and things like that, I can do that. But that's one of the reasons that I told it like don't worry about persistence and don't worry about auth, because like getting that all going, I can't imagine anything being more boring than watching me try to negotiate like a SQL Server connection or something and getting that to work while we're all watching me vibe code this, you know. So I feel like I'm asking a lot of your tolerance as it is, but so. In memory, I put it in my prompt. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's just memory. I'm sure if I close the browser tab and spun this back up again, you wouldn't see any of those stories that I added.
sometimes I'm fascinated by the weird decisions. You look at your main app page, it has dates for like the browser. It has dates for some of the historical stories. They were created by some fantastical date.
Yeah.
Like, why make that decision?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I get that.
Well, and this is something to keep. So this is something that's kind of cool or interesting about vibe coding anyway, is that LLMs don't always return you the same result, even with the same prompt. Okay, because there's probability attached to it, right? And so this is why, like, if I'm using a tool, especially a tool where, like Cursor, like all my files are over here. This is still VS Code, right? I can crack open any of these files that I want to and make manual changes to it. Okay? And that's one of the reasons I, as a coder, like Cursor, is it gives me easy access to, I can add files, I can do anything to this code base I want to manually. Cursor has built into it like tab autocomplete and things like that. If you've ever used Copilot, you're probably familiar with kind of what that looks like. So it has all that stuff, right? Where was I going with this? Oh, we were talking about why it makes the decisions it makes and the historical, fantastical data and things like that. Oh, gosh. Oh, right. LLMs don't always give you the same response for the same prompt. So this is useful because the decisions that Cursor's making right now might not have been the same decisions if I did this a second time in another project. Now, you may consider that a liability, but one of the things this enables you to do is get out of the death spiral that sometimes vibe coding will get you into. Because you'll get these tools and it'll start going down a path and it'll be like, oh gosh, this didn't work. Well, let me change this. Oh gosh, well now this doesn't work. So let me change this. Oh, I fixed it. No, it's still there. Oh my gosh. And it just can't move forward. It just can't move forward past the thing. And the ability of LLMs to give you different responses is you can roll back to a previous time, especially if you're doing git commits as you do some of this stuff. You can roll back to a particular point in your coding or in your conversation and start from there, or just start clean or whatever you want to do, and give it the same prompt, or even say something like, let's try this again. Give it the same prompt, and it will take a different route, or may take a different route to solve that problem, and it can get it past that hurdle. Replit has these great YouTube videos from one of the engineers. He does all these great videos about using Replit and vibe coding and things like that. And that's exactly what he does to get Replit past those sticking points. Is he's like, I just go back to an earlier point in the conversation, and I just redo the prompt, and we just go somewhere different, and then we get past it. So.
Temperature is something you can set large model, and is it more or less creative or whatever? But we used to have a seed. You were supposed to be able to put in a seed like statistics or statistical whatever. You put 1 in there, or you put 42, whatever your favorite number is. You should eat and say the same thing. Like, because it is, it's just
yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And yeah.
There's no way.
Yeah, although interestingly, on the other side, on LinkedIn today, there was somebody who pasted the same prompt into 5 different LLMs, Gemini included. And the prompt, I don't remember the exact wording, but the prompt was guess a number between 0 and 50. And all 5 of them guessed 27. Yeah, they take a screenshot for it. Okay, so now I have this little pages button here. Okay, so I can come here, no pages yet, first page, add new page, the title, the beginning. I can give it a page order if I want. And then what type is it? Do I want to continue to the next page? Do I want to present choices? Or do I want this page to end the story? Right? And so I can go to present choices. And then it's, yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And so now I can come here and I can add paragraphs. I can add choices, select a target page that choice is going to go to, and that sort of thing. So again, it's building all this out. Now, again, this is where a human being kind of needs to be here, because I built a very similar tool using Replit, and I thought it was a UX nightmare. There were create and save buttons all over the place. It was just littered with like the most common UX metaphors for these tasks. But it wasn't really, as a human being trying to use the tool to create a choose your own adventure story, it just was not intuitive. Like, it was hard to use, even though technically, yes, there were buttons and drop downs for everything that needed to happen. Again, Cursor isn't like looking at the UX and go, well, according to best UX practices, if you're trying to, right? Like an add paragraph button. Really? Like, can I just not put all the paragraphs here? Like what, you know, like it's just sort of making these decisions, but it's not a human being. It doesn't know how human beings like to use visual elements. I have to tell it that, right? So I have to come back to it and I have to say, like, you have an add paragraph button, but I don't want to add each individual paragraph separately. I just want to type all the display text in one box. And then it would remove that button and just give me the page content box. And, you know, or I could be like, hey, when I add choices, putting the choice text, selecting the target page is longer than the actual choice text. Like, is there some way you could redo the way those controls are laid out so that selecting the page number is just a few characters wide or something like that? And could you align it with the button or whatever? You're the one that has to supply these things. The LLMs, they don't know. They don't know what's good UX. They're just making sure that you can do the stuff that you asked it to be able to do, right? So yeah, so putting, you know, am I ready to deploy yet? Probably not. But look how far I got, right? Look how far I got with just those few prompts, you know? And I could decide like, hey, vibe coding over. Like now we're at a point where I want to start getting in and start making some changes. I find that oftentimes as a developer, if it hits a bug, it's faster for me to fix the bug than it is for the vibe tool to fix the bug, because you got to talk to it and help it figure out and point it in the right direction and have it give you information and you give it back information. It's kind of fun, but it takes a long time. And as a coder, I could just like console log stuff myself and be like, oh, this array is wrong and fix it. So you can make those decisions at any point, right? And that's why I think depending on who you are and how you like to write code, Cursor could be a great vibe coding tool because it allows you to transition into coder world so quickly and easily. Okay? Whereas if you use a tool like Replit, which if I'm ever building something and I'm like, I'm not touching code, I'm just not doing it, then I use Replit all the time. It's built for that kind of thing, right? And everything you have to configure is all very visual. I feel like it's the vibe coding tool that was designed by engineers for engineers that is still strictly vibe coding. But if I want to actually make changes to the code myself, it's a little bit tougher. It's not right here for me where I can just crack it open and be like, oh, on delete, that's a stupid name. I want to do on deleter. There, okay. You know, I like that's really hard to do in Replit. Like I gotta finagle with it a little bit, or put the source in a repository and pull the source back down in the IDE that I want to use to work on that app or something like that. Yeah, so. Yeah, so what you would do is you would use Replit to put it in your Git repository, and then you would connect Cursor to the Git repository and pull it down. It's just like if you wanted to do it in VS Code or whatever. I'm not saying it takes years. I'm just saying it's extra steps, right? And the nice thing about Cursor is I have this going side by side, right? And I can interact. But what I don't have is a preview of the UI over here as it's making changes. I have to wait for it to finish everything, rebuild everything, sometimes restart the server depending on what things are going on, and then my browser will update with the changes. Again, that's not a crippling problem, but when you're using Replit, you got a UI preview right there that's changing in real time while you're putting in the prompts and watching it make changes. So depending on what you are trying to do, you know, one tool may fit you better than another. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Obviously, you have a meter right now about how much you spent tonight. I think that is actually.
Oh. Oh, what? Yeah, I certainly have not come anywhere close to burning up my token limit. I'm kind of that does make me want to ask it though. Like, oh yeah, mm-hmm. Yeah. How many tokens have I used so far on this project?
I know that.
Oh, it doesn't have information about token uses. It's tracked by the platform or service I'm using, like Cursor. That's for funny, ChatGPT or whatever. But what you can do, and I'll need to hunt for it a bit. And I don't remember if it's in the app or on the website, but they do have a screen that shows you like what your billing rate is so far, you know, and yeah, and
I feel like it's pretty approachable.
yeah, yeah. And that's something where like, if you look at like Claude Code's integration with VS Code, like it's real good about showing you your token burn in real time. Like it just has it right there. And so. Mhm. Yes, yes. So, yeah, so what happens is like so like I'm on the $20 a month plan, right? And so based on the LLM model it's using, I get X amount of tokens, roughly speaking, on that particular model that's included in the 20 bucks. Once I surpass those limits, it will default to automatically swapping models. Now, if I don't want it to do that, I can continue to specify the model, but now I'm paying per request, just like I were making an API call myself. And now I'm at the mercy of whatever that provider is. Now, that really kind of sucks, because the old pricing model used to be you could pick the model you wanted, and as long as it wasn't like a premium max model like, you know, Opus 4 or something like that, you just had unlimited requests, and it would just slow you down once you'd used up X amount of tokens or whatever. But that's it. It's just the request would be processed a little more slowly than they were before, and that was pretty great. But the people at Cursor figured out, hey, this is actually pretty expensive, and it must have been because when they changed the pricing model, the world exploded, because people were getting bills now for thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars because of the amount of Cursor they had been using up to that point, you know, and so.
More getting started questions. Why do you go out to providers
Not at all. Not at all. Now, Cursor will cover all that for you. It will handle all that stuff for you. Now, you can create APIs with those providers and connect it to Cursor, and then Cursor will use your API key to interact with the model, as opposed to using its own underlying mechanisms. So yeah, if you've got some, 10 million per, yeah, that's right. Let's say you work for Google and can use as many Gemini tokens as you want. You can tell Cursor, hey, I want to use Gemini, and here's my API key, and Cursor will just use it just like a client, just like any other client would use it.
One more disclaimer. Started. Don't use your work's secrets on consumer level products. If you have an enterprise code, you should use the enterprise level stuff. A big great story very early on. I don't read company names. Toy company in Europe. Only the executives. Excel document. Everybody can benefit from in ChatGPT. So enterprise level information have enterprise level security. That's consumer based. Read tokens like this.
Yeah, I would.
Yes.
Yeah.
I like to liken it to Google House.
That's right. Everyone benefits. Yeah. 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 And you raise a really good point for those of you who are just starting to get into vibe coding, or maybe you're like Cursor curious and are thinking about trying stuff. Just do some hobby project with it. It will get you familiar with the tools. You will find your way around. You will find the things that you will use the most, and you'll get used to it. I highly recommend doing that before like going to your boss and saying, hey, could you buy us all Cursor, Team Cursor subscriptions?
Based on that, if you're running this, right, do you have this Cursor offer you any sort of logging reporting mechanisms where you can track utilization over 20 employees or whatever and get like logs data and stuff off?
Yeah, they have team plans and stuff where they can separate out different people's token usage and things like that. Yeah. To the prompts I used originally? Oh, I mean, I can. They're nothing. They're nothing special. I didn't engineer. Oh well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I can. Yeah, I can do that. Yeah. I mean, this will be in the recording.
Yeah, with your permission, we'll post it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, if you are doing a project, how good is Cursor at interacting? Maybe more robust.
So I will tell you that Cursor is very extensible in terms of tool usage and things like that. So you can define tooling in Cursor and things like that, and give it API keys and credentials and things like that that you need to give it to connect to those tools, and you can have that as part of your workflow. For me personally, I tend to like CI/CD pipelines to do stuff like that, that interact with my repository rather than having my IDE do those deployments. But that's just me, right? If you are kind of like a, hey, I want to go straight from my machine to production, or whatever, or a test server somewhere or something like that, you can absolutely configure Cursor to do that. It does not do it out of the box. So you're going to be doing, yeah. Yeah. Oh, same. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and as long as we're talking about hobby stuff, like using tools like Replit or Lovable, like they actually host it, whatever you're building, at a publicly accessible URL. So if you're just like messing around and you want to be able to hit it from other machines or show it to your friends or whatever, you just give them the URL. And no, I would never. Mhm. Oh, oh, are you talking about like rolling back stuff that it's done and rebuilding it? I thought you meant asking it to like build your rule set and things like that. Yeah. I don't, because how do I want to say this? Because what I'm getting when I do that is the aggregate of how most developers would probably set those things up, and that is not how I would set most things up. Most developers aren't big DDD experts and don't code exactly that way, or they code CRUD apps that kind of follow the same pattern every single time in the same way and things like that. And I would rather set rules up myself because I have pretty specific rules that are not shared by many developers. So. Sure, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I'm like, how can I say this without saying that every other developer is worse than I am? That's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying. It's just I have particular design methodologies that are very important to me, that are important to a certain segment of the developer community, but not widespread. So. Mm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. There is a facility for that. So in Cursor, now because I don't do this, I haven't used it, so I might get the syntax wrong. But you can do / create you can do / create cursor rule on the basis of something that on the basis of some point in the conversation. I don't remember the exact syntax to do it, but you can like go to a certain point in the conversation where you've had a chat with it, and then you can say / create cursor rule, and it will update your rules document with that thing that you did. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. I'll let it update my README all day long. Yeah, I don't care about that. Yeah, who reads those? Yeah, I'll let it update my documentation all day long. But I don't, but when it comes to like coding standards and the way I like architecture done and things like that, I do not let Cursor tell me how to do that. I, we're kind of winding down here. As one other thing I would throw out for your consideration, this is true of most usage of AI, is just keep in mind that whatever skill you outsource to a tool, it will atrophy over time. And there are things that AI and LLMs and vibe code tools can definitely do, but you want to be conscientious about what you decide to do with them. I personally, and I know not everybody in this room is going to share this opinion probably, but I personally don't think it's healthy to just say, well, this tool can do these things, so therefore I will have the tool do these things for me. Just remember that the more that you do that, the weaker your own muscles are going to get around those skills and things like that. And those are going to atrophy. And if that's okay with you, if you're like, hey, I just kind of wanted to get into management anyway, I don't really care if I forget how to write a unit test, then that's fine. But if that's important to you, or like architecture and design and things like that are still important to you, don't outsource it to the AI just because it is possible to outsource it to the AI. Make conscientious decisions about what role you want it to play in your ecosystem and the role you want to play in your ecosystem as you use these things. I think that's very important.
A little bit there, one thing, if at one night or it's very tough, right? Send a link to the meetup or into the LinkedIn. Give us feedback on something. Let's see if we can vibe coding for the next 2 or 3 of these. You guys have input there. We got really close to faster screen one. Probably something else. Yes. So meetup.com/next5, runs there. And then on LinkedIn, it's just next 5. Logo I have. Yes. Like, subscribe.
Comment. Smash that like button. Turn on notifications.
Like Mark Reed, some things.
Mm-hmm.
You guys know anybody that are site based
there's applications out there that don't take prices. Check the keyword, see how well it ranks on Google. And it turns around and takes rank better. Rewrites it and makes it rank better. So you're basically now, of course, you gotta be careful with AI because it's gonna start looking at things and it's gonna degrade as it goes by. It's gonna all look itself excellent.
Well, that's what I mean. I see that at my ex like every day. Everybody's got a 20 post thread that's got like that viral hook. Then when you get into content, it's very
Yeah.
that's how I'm scared. But if anybody knows anybody that's doing things using AI tools, even outside of that space, like always. Or let me know if you want me to I have access to some of the Google tools where some of my friends already. It's on my list. I've got that. I created commercials for some customers. Show their video, audio, and the whole thing. And created like a commercial that would take some, I don't know, like RPG. Just by writing a script, right? Yeah. Well, no, they generate the starter photo and badge it, right? Take the photograph and badge it. So text the photo, get that photo, say, I'll make this into a video, and then they had like a 4 CD panel
where they were showing, that they live up in Minnesota, this car that was stuck in snow or wherever, we showed the beach. Well, they had turbines. It was about, oh, they had good enough seeds that you were there's, you know, weird things. Google has one called Real Free. So, but I would rather have like a technical marketing. So, well, it's what tone should I use? Which kernels should I use? Take it.
Yeah, well, and Cursor is just a text editor. At the end of the day, you can use it to write text. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Yeah. And if this was all too nerdy for you, then come to the next session where they'll cover Replit.
Slightly less.
Yes, marginally less nerdy.